Hey everybody, welcome to The Whole Truth. And evidently I have a special guest with me today. This is my girlfriend.
I'm not your girlfriend. Girlfriend.
Was. So yeah, we're starting something new here on The Whole Truth.
Was as in I'm your wife now. We
Yes.
didn't break up. We're not like this friendship going on.
I was getting there. I think, well, I say that. I guess there's millions and millions
There
of people
is-
watching that would be like, who is this chick?
Exactly.
We don't know her. Did I just call her a chick?
You did.
Anyways. Hey, so listen, we're doing something different here on the channel, and that is that we are going to, Kelly and I feel very led. For those of you who don't know, and we'll talk about this more today, we're both widowed. Kelly is a widow. I'm a widower, and we dated for almost 2 years.
And yes, we know the difference. Widow, widower. Just for caption reasons, it's easy to say two widows.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear.
Plus, I'm gonna be honest. I know there's a disagreement here. You know, the English language is what it is, but I feel like widower sounds like the one who did the widowing.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Like, doesn't it? Anyways, whatever. But totally know the difference. If you guys have seen the comments, whatever people are saying. Okay. But, so we're starting something different here. And that is that the goal is that once a week, we want to post a podcast. And we want to start a podcast sharing our experience. So normally here on The Whole Truth, there's Bible studies that are happening. This is definitely not a Bible study. This is going to be more, Kelly and I trying to help marriages and families through sharing our experiences of loss and grief and blending families and church. And then of all of that, and part of the reason that we feel called to do this is because as Kelly is finding out, the life of a pastor is already on display. There's, whether we do this or not, everything we do is already monitored and watched in some way. I'm not saying monitored and watched like our church is some sort of weird cult, like what? That's not what I meant. We have great elders. They don't do that. But
all eyes are on us.
yeah, like and there's already, I already have a large following on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube, and so there's already a lot happening there. And so there's already a lot on display. One day all of a sudden it's, here's this woman in my videos and here we are getting married and, proposing, and everybody's going, what's going on? What's happening? And so we hope to share that story and share that journey, but also, there's an end goal of our life because it's on display. We hope to be a help to other people. So that's the idea, is that, to take these two people who've gone through loss and grief and already being seen, because I'm a pastor and I have social media pages, to go ahead and begin a podcast that would be the two of us sharing that together.
And having gone through the grief process, the friendship process with all eyes on us and assumptions and rumors and then the relationship and then the talk of that and then the marriage. So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I think that, this will be a help for us too in the future as we look back and get to say, oh yeah, I remember when we were there. So, we have lots to share. So let's just start out with that. Kelly, why don't we start out with where we are right now, in case everybody doesn't know, how many children do we currently have?
We have nine children and a granddaughter.
And a granddaughter.
So a granddaughter, but 7 children living in the house.
Yeah, 7 living here, two moved out.
Yeah.
So how many did you bring share a little more about that. How many did you bring
so 3 daughters, current ages, 17, 11, and 7.
Yeah. And then I brought 6 into the relationship.
Yeah.
So I have adopted 2 when I was very young. And so some people hear my daughter's ages and go, you look too young to have daughters that old. Well, only one. I'm only too young for one of my daughters. But when I was 20 years old, brought in a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old, and then went on to have 4 more after that. So grand total, I have 6 with my late wife. And so then when we come together, we make 9. And so
what do we call it? What do we call our lives?
happy chaos.
Happy chaos.
Yeah, it is. It is happy chaos.
It is.
I feel like we just live our lives deciding what we forgot.
I agree.
Oh, we agree to something and then we go, oh, I forgot about. But
And we have a calendar. We have like a full blown filled calendar and still
full.
miss things.
it is so full. Yeah. So, and I don't know. It's hard to quantify how full that calendar really is. I mean, I feel like
I feel like I want to show
Yeah.
a glimpse of my calendar.
don't do it. You just never know.
No, I know.
It's,
I know.
Always.
Yeah. It's full. You can't fit. We have some overlapping going on, and
Yeah. It's so full.
yeah, it's full.
And we try, we try to monitor, what we're doing. We try to block out time for family time and each other time. And it is just, it's a lot. It's a whirlwind, but it's happy chaos.
And we have to wake up daily and make choices like we did this morning on how is this day going to roll out. We've got tons of overlapping. So how do we do that?
Yeah. And so, so, hey, what do you do in the middle of that? Start a new podcast.
All good things. All good things.
Okay, so there you go. There's kind of a brief introduction of where we are right now. We only got married. What are we at?
3 months.
3 months. That like almost
3 months and a couple days.
Yeah, 3 months and a couple of days, almost to the day. 3 months ago. So we just got married back in December, and that was pretty quick too. We only got married after a month of engagement. We were only engaged for a month and a couple of days.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in one of these episodes as well, because the idea that when we're at our age and we've both been widowed and you're going to get married, you're kind of at a point to say like, why would we wait?
Right.
And
Right.
so I'd love to dive into that deeper too one day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover, and I'm really excited to introduce you all to Kelly in a deeper way, and I've been doing that on some of the short videos, but
I mean, it's kind of highlighting.
oh, it's totally highlighting. Yeah.
I don't want to say my bad side. I promise I'm not just a rule breaker. There's more to me.
There's so much more. There's so much more depth. The
An onion.
Yeah, the rules are broken way worse than.
No, that's not true. You'll see.
It's not true. Well, why don't we start out with Kelly? Why don't you tell us? Just go back in time, and give us your story of marriage to your first husband, and on through marriage and children, and then on into what happened that led to widowhood for you.
Okay. So I met my late husband when I was 23, and we were dating for about 9 months, and we got married. We knew instantly that we were going to get married and that we were going to spend the rest of our lives what we thought together. So got married.
Well, I mean, you did.
The rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got married at 9 months, and then we got pregnant with Kaylee and had her, and the first year of marriage, and then we went years hoping for another baby, and that was not in the Lord's plans at the time. And so 6 years after having Kaylee, we had Sophia, and then I thought, well, for 2 years after Sophia, that's it. We tried hard enough for Sophia. This is probably our last child, and then out of the blue comes Mila, and our little fireball. And my husband owned a landscaping company that we got to be, I don't know, pretty successful in my eyes. He had a passion for what he did and for working. He was very very driven and hardworking, and we finally got to a point where it seemed like, okay, things are really starting to get somewhere, and he started to have like, I don't know, he would cramp up at work, and his whole body would go into a full cramp, and he started losing weight. He lost like 70 pounds in 2 months, and we went from doctor to doctor to doctor trying to figure out what exactly was wrong. This was back in 2015. And finally, after months of going to different doctors, we went. He was hospitalized for a weekend, and they did CT scans and MRIs, and they, number one, diagnosed him a type 1 diabetic, and number two, they found a bunch of things in his pelvic area that were concerning to them. And so they did like a CT with contrast, and all the uptake went to his shoulder. He had a big tumor in his shoulder. And so they were basically telling us this could be cancer. We don't know. We want him to go to an oncologist. So we went to an oncologist, and they didn't biopsy the shoulder, but they said first thing they wanted to do was every 6 months check on it, see if there was growth. And so after 6 months, there was no growth. We did one more 6-month check, and there was no growth. And so they said, okay, well, there's nothing going on there. It's benign is the word, right? And but he was still sick, still getting sick, still couldn't work. When they diagnosed him a type 1 diabetic, they told him he couldn't be outdoors, he couldn't be doing the work that he loved to do. And so slowly we tried to get people to help us and pay people to work for us, and it just we ended up closing our landscaping business. And I decided to go to school for dental assisting and working full time while he was home with the girls, and just really deteriorating, getting sicker and sicker. And we were just, questioning everything. What's happening? Why is he still getting sick? They said it wasn't cancer. What's going on here? And then by 2020, he was in so much pain. I mean, I would say for a solid year before he got diagnosed, he was he said he felt like his tailbone. He was constantly rubbing it. It was just in excruciating pain all the time. He would go to bed crying every single night. And we decided we needed more answers, and so we took him to the hospital again, and that's when they admitted him and decided they were going to do a colonoscopy.
And what year is this now?
2020.
Okay, so you went
June of
you went
2020.
5 years. Of,
5 years of
pain and
yeah, and so they wouldn't let me in. It was COVID. And so I was at work the next morning. Before I went to work, I went to the hospital, and I saw his hospital window, and we prayed together and prayed for the best outcome. And about 2 hours later, I got a phone call from him, and he told me it was cancer. And so I had to rush over to the hospital, and they finally let me in. And they told us that they think it was stage 3 cancer. But they wanted to run more tests and find out exactly what it was. And you could just tell the doctors didn't want to tell us and didn't want to say anything to us because they see this family. And so they sent us to an oncologist, and we found out it was stage 4 and that he probably had it since 2015. And that it was just all throughout his body. It was in his liver, in his lungs. It was just everywhere. And so at that point, you have to decide, how do we go forward here? You have doctors telling you that they're not going to make it. If you don't do chemo, he's not going to make it more than 2 months. But if they give him chemo, he'll probably make it 6 months, maybe a little longer than that. And in my eyes, I saw it as my husband's not going to die. The Lord is going to heal him of this, and I don't need to be concerned with death. But still, we had our conversations and our prayers, and we had so much. There's alternative medicines, and we just didn't know. We didn't know what to do. You're just in a total blur at that time, and so we talked, and he was very easygoing about it. He just said that he wanted to fight for us, for the girls and for me. And so, unfortunately, we went with chemo, which took his last year and just ruined his last year. And if I could go back, I would absolutely never put that poison into his body or allow it to go into his body. So the chemo did nothing. It irritated his tumors. He was so sick, like literally throwing up every day, every hour, just constant throwing up. There was no relief for him. Constant pain. They had him on fentanyl patches. Those were doing nothing for him. His oncologist was cruel and mean and just didn't really care. And about 3 months before he passed away, we were at just a boiling point where we needed help for him. He was going to bed in the bathtub. He would fill the bathtub up and go to sleep because that was the only semi-relief he would get. And so we went and we were going to get, what are those shots that people get usually in like their
Cortisone?
Yeah, cortisone shot by his tailbone because they said that would probably help him. And they even said maybe Botox to kill the nerves there, whatever. So I remember wheeling him in his wheelchair into this office. And I mean, he was so out of it and just in so much pain. There was just, it was hard. And we set up an appointment to get that done. And I mean, it was a very, very quick deterioration at that point. We had people telling us that we needed to put him in at-home hospice and that people live for years in home hospice, which wasn't true, but they were telling me that's the only way he was going to get pain relief is if we put him in at-home hospice. And so we did. We made that decision to do that. And so they started giving him morphine, and morphine just started breaking him down to nothing. There was nothing left of him. I mean, I would try and have a conversation with him and you just couldn't, but he was out of pain. And
How long were you all on
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
3 weeks. Yeah. And about a week in, I looked at him and I said, I'm taking you off this morphine. I'm losing you. I can't have a conversation with you. I don't want this. I don't want you to wither away. And he just looked at me and he said, please don't. And so I knew I just needed to let it happen. And so I continued to give him his morphine, and I would have to put him on my shoulders and bring him to the bathroom when he had to go to the bathroom. And he just withered away. And about 2.5 weeks in, I had a nurse friend come over and she said, it's time to give him this medicine that the doctor gave us to put in the back of the refrigerator. And she kind of tried explaining to me what was happening, and I kind of didn't register exactly what was happening. And so they gave him this medicine, and within 2 days, we laid him down he was on his hospital bed, and we pushed it up against the couch so I could lay right next to him, and my nurse friend was there, plus we had the hospice nurse there, and we just laid and we fell asleep together, just holding each other. And I didn't know really that it was happening. I guess in my mind, I was just like, no, this is not happening. He's going to live. He's going to live. And we went to sleep that night, and I woke up. It was 2:16 a.m. And I woke up and I saw him take a deep breath. And I said, no, 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 no. I said, I love you. I love you. I love you. And he whispered the words, I love you. And then another deep breath. And that was it. And I screamed out and I just said, I think I lost him. I think he's gone. And he was. And that was May of 2021. And going through that was the worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life. And yeah, I don't know how much further you want me to go before maybe you can just take over for right now.
Well, yeah, I think that, for everybody watching, I think that I think that the thing to remember is that, I think every person's tragedy, there's a lot of people that watch these videos that you and I make, and they've gone through similar things. There's lots of widows and widowers that are watching, and others have shared these videos to people that they know or have been widowed. And one of the things that I would just encourage you to know would be like, as you hear Kelly talking and going over that, and I could share my experience with my wife and what happened with her, and it's similar but it's different. You know, there's those similarities that I can say, man, I can relate exactly with that, and then there's those parts that you go, you know, that's a little bit different. But you know, at the end of the day, I think the thing that I would, how about I put it in words like this? You know, I've heard people say that when Jesus went to the tomb when Lazarus had died and he wept, they're like, well, why would he weep? I mean, if he knows what heaven is like, and, you know, maybe he wept because he brought, you know, he knew he was bringing Lazarus back from heaven and bringing him back to earth. Maybe that's why he wept. And I think that cheapens the tragedy that we go through. I think Jesus wept, and it took my wife passing away for me to recognize this. I think Jesus wept because death hurts. Mm-hmm. And tragedy is exactly that. It's mm-hmm. tragedy. Mm-hmm. And you know, the Bible says that we don't have a high priest who's not been tempted in every way that we've been tempted. You know, our God, when he came down to this earth, he did more than come for a extended stay. He experienced everything that we experience, and death is one of those things that we experience. Mm-hmm. And it is tragic, and it is hard. And whether it's, you know, I've heard stories of people who, you know, theirs is the opposite end of that. Healthy, everything was good, somebody left, tragedy struck, whatever that was. I didn't even have a chance to say goodbye. I didn't know it was coming. Yet I've also had persons look at me and say, well, you should feel lucky, Justin, because you got to say goodbye to your wife. I didn't get to say goodbye to whoever. And I always tell those people when they say things like that, I say, you know, there's no sense in comparing. Mm-hmm. We don't compare suffering. Mm-hmm. We don't compare grief. We don't compare suffering. You know, your suffering, it's not like I would look at it and go, well, yours was easier than mine because mine, I'm like yours. You know, I sat in the room and watched my wife slow her breathing until the point that she passed. And I experienced that in a elongated way, and in a tragic way. So mine was worse. That's not true. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sure that there is there's an additional layer of tragedy for the person who watches as their spouse deteriorates, like you and I did, or there's probably a layer of grief and pain in that tragedy for the person who loses their spouse all at once. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there's a layer of pain for the person that's watching this right now and goes, yeah, but I lost my child and that's unnatural. Yes, that's its own, like, we don't have to compare those. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, there's no way, I don't think there's any way that anyone could see you tell that story and not recognize the pain and the tragedy that is that you experienced. Mm-hmm. And there's no need in saying, oh, well, you know, I'm not saying we do this. I'm saying we've learned this. Mm-hmm. Like we don't have to compare, you know. For the person watching, like, your divorce is tragic. It's hard. And no one's taking that from you. Like, us telling this story doesn't take away. We're simply saying that, I'm simply saying that you know, tragedy is hard, mm-hmm. and loss is hard, and it's all hard, and it's all tough. And at the very least, I can say that our God weeps with us. Mm-hmm. And our God, he has shared in the thing that we have experienced. Even when he lost his friend Lazarus, we saw him go to the tomb. And the shortest verse in the Bible, in the book of John, is that Jesus wept. Mm-hmm. I think there's such depth there to think that Jesus was so human that he wept. Mm-hmm. I think it was real tears. It was real pain. He felt what it was to experience someone dying. Mm-hmm. And even though he knew he was going to call him back, it's you know, I think if I could equate those two, like, how confident are you that you're going to see Jonathan in heaven?
100%.
100%. You know, the day is coming that you get to be reunited with Jonathan in some way. And so, like, you know that's coming. And yet, this tragedy hurt.
Yeah.
Excruciating hurt.
4 years later,
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah. Just to recount the story.
Yeah.
There's this pain that goes along with it. Yet I know the end of it.
Right.
You know, I sometimes I used to call them well-meaning Christians, and now I just call them mean-spirited Christians. You know, who go, well, why are you still sad about that? You know, you're going to see her again.
Which we just experienced some of that on the 4-year anniversary of Sarah passing.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, just go read
you're grieving in front of people.
Oh yeah.
And trying to help people through their process by
Go read the comments.
Yeah, there.
You'll see.
There's some comments there that
Oh,
some
yeah.
have been deleted by the person, but even
Right.
still, like, there is no timeline. There is no.
No, I don't think, one thing that I've learned about time too is that it doesn't matter how long you have with someone, it was never enough.
Right.
I remember my neighbor came to me, and it's interesting the way that happened. But he came to me and he was concerned because his wife was diagnosed with dementia, and the doctor said, this will take her. She will. She was in her 80s, and this is going to take her. And I remember him in my yard. This is after my wife had passed. He's in my yard and he's starting to cry as he's telling me that his wife was going to pass. And I remember I reached up and I touched his shoulder and I said, I'm so sorry. And I said, I do know the pain that you're going through, and I'm really sorry for you. And he looked at me and he said, it was that thing again. He looked at me, he goes, yeah, but he said, you don't understand. I've been with my wife for the last, I think he said 60 some years, like 65 years. And he was like, I don't know anything different. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, he's in pain, he's suffering, just all you can do is console in that moment. Like, I didn't correct him and say, we don't compare sufferings in that moment. I just let him, he's just in pain. Right. But I thought to myself of that, like, he was with his wife for 65 years. And look, it's not like he goes, oh, well, we've lived a good life together. It's time. No, he's crying in my backyard because his wife of 65 years, and she didn't even pass. By the way, the end of that story was he passed and she didn't. And, but the thought that he was going to lose her even after 60 plus years together, and maybe it was even more, like his heart was broken over that idea. And the whole point I was trying to get at in saying that is, it doesn't matter how much time you have with somebody, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true. I've learned that the same thing is true of grief. It doesn't matter how much time elapses,
Right.
that grief is still there.
Yeah.
And there can be things, well, like sitting on a podcast and going over the story, that can bring that back up. There can be things, triggers, you smell something, you see something, you have a dream, somebody makes a comment.
Your kids make a look,
Right.
a face that you see your late spouse in that.
Right.
Or a milestone that happens, a graduation, and you can't help but to think, I can't believe this person, my spouse isn't here to see that. And
Right.
what would they be thinking at this moment? What would they think that our child turned 18 years old? Or
Right. Big moments are magnified,
yeah,
even more,
Yeah.
when you're, like you said, you get a child graduating, that's a big moment. But when
Yeah.
you've lost somebody, then your mind goes to that person.
Right.
Well, what would they be thinking if they were here? Or how would they react
Yes.
right now? Or even, I wish they were here.
Yeah.
I wish they were experiencing this.
yeah,
And there's the reality check. Don't misunderstand this. I'm sure that the reality check moment is, my daughter graduated, and my daughter got married, and I remember that thought of being like, man, I wish my wife was here. And then there's reality check, right? Like, my wife is in heaven. She is not mourning what she missed. She's with the Lord, in the presence of the Lord. She is not mourning missing my daughter's marriage ceremony. We're mourning her, but she's not mourning us. But that doesn't change the grief. Like, the
Right.
reality check of she's not sad doesn't change the grief that we feel while we're here. And it doesn't seem to matter how long of a period that is. for me, here we are more than 4 years later, and that grief can feel at times just as strong.
Yeah.
I will say that the waves of grief don't seem to be as long.
Yeah.
The bouts of grief don't seem to be as long. I hate to admit it, but I would say that for a time I was even depressed,
Oh, for sure.
And again, those I used to call them well-meaning, now I just call them mean Christians, who would look at me and go, well, you shouldn't be depressed. You have the Holy Spirit. I'm just telling you, as a human being who had lost his wife and was going to bed alone. And, I remember just dreading going to bed. I remember looking down the hallway. We've got this long hallway, and I'm looking at that bedroom door, and it could have been a mile away. And it how far it looked, the dread of walking that hallway, knowing that I was going to shut that door and get in the bed that my wife and I used to get in. It was just so, it was awful.
Oh, yeah.
It was just so awful.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that pain that was so awful led me to this kind of place of depression. Now, I believe the Lord's delivered me from that and brought me out of that. I'm not in a place of depression, but a wave of grief can still hit.
Oh, absolutely.
To the point of what feels crippling, what feels heavy, what feels even like anxiety, the idea of certain things, whatever, just like we were just talking about. But I'm just saying that, that
Even married.
Yeah.
Even married. Let's make that clear. Like, people come at us because you express your sadness or for the memorial of Sarah. And it is okay. It is natural. To me, I would think it would be strange if, because you got married, there's no more memory of Sarah, there's no more memory of Jonathan. We just have each other. We're just focused on each other. And
yeah.
I don't know. That's a crazy thought to me, and it's hurtful. It's hurtful when people come at us and say those things, that where it's not okay to grieve publicly. It's not okay to post about our spouses. We have several children with those spouses, and those kids need to have their memory kept alive.
Yeah, and I would say too, I think that that's part of what we're doing here. We're helping to educate what it really looks like from the inside of this scenario.
Yeah.
I often have thought when I see, comments or people send me DMs or, whatever, and y'all just don't know, like, the number of DMs that come through. It was a lot.
It is a lot.
So many.
Yes, it is.
People are like, people say, they're like, you don't respond to your DMs. I'm like, because there's thousands.
And there's like 90% craziness spoken.
There's a lot of craziness spoken. Some of y'all know who you are speaking that craziness. Anyways, but that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother podcast. We should just read some one day. We should go through and read some of the DMs.
It would give people a real taste.
Yeah. Whew. Anyways, but these. I think my point is like the point here is to help to educate, to say here's what it is from a real perspective of somebody who's really gone through it, not the perspective of somebody who's not gone through it, who's just saying, oh, and there'll probably even be something like this that would say, oh, well, that shouldn't be that way. The Bible says, or something, and try to throw a Bible verse at me. And listen, if that's the way, if you walk away from this going, no, I didn't learn anything from that. No, I didn't get anything from that. That's, hey, that's on you. That's, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't think of something like this, but I'm going to tell you that, you have two people with experience who've lived through tragedy, who've lived through grief, who've lived through loss, who've lived through rebuilding life, and now have come together. And so, I believe there's value in that experience, in that experience alone, and learning from that experience. One thing I've always thought about business, and I've always known about business, whether, church business or financial business, if I was dealing with my job or if I was dealing with my calling, I always want to surround myself with people who had experience doing what I want to do. Find the person that's done the thing that you want to do, and go do that with him. I had a pastor friend that I used to talk to, and I remember as the church began to grow, for a time we were the tiniest church in the county, and our church hadn't grown for years, and we were really small, and then the church began to grow, and we'll talk about that in the podcast one day, I'm sure. But the church began to grow, and I went to this pastor, and he said after the church had grown, and his church was always significantly bigger. Had always been significantly bigger than ours. And I remember going to him, and I was talking to him about some of the growing pains. And I remember the way it felt when he looked at me, and he said, you've taken it to a level, you've been taken to a level that I've not been to yet. And I remember like the feeling of that shift of like, I always looked up to him as like he already knew all of these things, and he did. He had the experience, and then it like shifted, and he's like, you're treading new ground that I don't really have experience to share with you what that what that looks like or how to navigate that. He's like, he said this to me. He was like, I could take good guesses and try to give you wise counsel, but I've never lived that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point of what I'm saying here is,
For sure.
We've lived that, and we've lived that tragedy. And so something that I've learned in the middle of that is that, and I'm sure I'll share this a whole lot, is that grief and joy exist in the exact same space.
Yeah, absolutely.
The perception that we have is that because somebody's grieving, they have no joy, or that because somebody's joyful or even happy, that they don't have grief, or that they don't have sadness.
Yes.
And the truth is that those two do exist in the same space.
They do.
And I just actually want to touch on that just from a theological standpoint for a moment. Certainly grief is not of the Lord. Like, we don't see a fruit of the Spirit as grief.
Yeah.
Right? The fruit of the Spirit is joy. But I heard somebody say one time, I can't remember who it was, but I heard a pastor say one time, he was talking about how people used to say that, the Spirit can't dwell in a dirty vessel. And he said, well, what other choice does the Spirit have? Because we're all dirty vessels. Like, to say the Spirit can't dwell in a dirty vessel would imply that we have to be clean for the Holy Spirit. And we do have to be clean through the blood of Jesus.
Yes.
But if what you mean is that you have to have this perfect life, this sinless life, for the Holy Spirit to indwell you, well,
that will never happen.
It'll never happen. There's not one. There's not one around. And so in the same way with joy, we are in a life that has tragedy and grief and sadness, and we're not supposed to live there.
Yeah.
God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of sound mind. And he says over and over, don't fear, don't fear, don't fear. But you have to admit that every now and then fear happens.
Yeah.
Something happens and it's like, man, that made me afraid. I'd love to be able to say I'm brave all the time.
Fearless.
I'm totally fearless. Yeah. But that would be a lie. There are times coming into this, before we were, what are we at, 37 minutes in, were you a little nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Yeah. Nerves happen. Fear happens.
Yeah.
And so fear and bravery exist in the same space.
Exactly.
Grief and joy, though joy is the part that is from the Spirit, joy does exist in the space that grief exists.
Definitely.
And they don't, one doesn't cancel the other one. One could cancel the other one out.
Yeah.
One day joy will rule and grief will have no place. But right now we still have grief to deal with.
Yes.
And one day, bravery and fearlessness will rule, but right now there's still fear to deal with.
Yeah.
And so, don't think that just because somebody is grieving that they can't have joy simultaneously. It reminds me of this thought of when I remember being little. I was younger, maybe a teenager, and there was a child that had died, and the parents were videoed spraying silly string on the child's headstone. And I remember this group of moms like nagging on that, like they were ragging on that real hard, like why would they do that? That's disgraceful and whatever, and I would never have done that. And I didn't think of it then. I just I heard what everyone was saying, and I don't know, I didn't think of it. But when I think of it now, and I think everybody's got to grieve in their own way.
Yeah.
And that was an example of like grief and joy in the same place. Like,
Yeah.
they're remembering their son, and I'm sure Silly String probably had a role in that somewhere.
For sure.
I don't. You probably didn't never use Silly String and just whip it out one day at the graveside. You probably there's probably some memory they had or something they were dealing with, and so they used Silly String.
Or the fun things they missed out on.
Yeah, or just the fact that, hey, it's his birthday, and
Yeah.
we're trying to remember him on his birthday, and that's the point that I'm saying is, like grief and joy exist in the same space, and so there's times that we are reminded and encouraged and edified by the hope that Christ has for us, and the remembrance that that mom, speaking for myself, that mom's in heaven, and that she's waiting for us, and that's how I think you can end up in those bouts where you're in the middle of grief, and then something tickles you, some memory, some whatever, you're reminiscing with some friend, and you end up laughing, and then you have this kind of laughing moment, or this kind of joyful moment, and then yet that person leaves, and when they leave and they go home, and now you're faced to walk that hallway and look down the hallway at this door that you're gonna walk through and shut behind you, and that grief settles back in. You're not in a strange place, you're in an earthly place.
Yeah.
This is what everybody on earth eventually will deal with, is that joy and grief will have to exist in the same space.
Yeah.
And so, I can totally say that I'm at a place where I've gone from tragedy through grief, tragedy and loss through grief, to, now rebuilding life together. And I'm at a place where, I think that there's more joy than there is grief. But I don't think there was ever a place where grief totally took over and there was no joy. It probably felt like that if I went back 4 years and asked myself, 4 years ago this moment, late March, because I lost my wife March the 5th of 2021.
Yes.
So just a few months before you lost Jonathan. And if I was to go back and ask myself then, did I feel any joy? I'd probably say no.
Yeah.
In that moment, I would
for
probably
sure.
say no.
For sure.
But looking back on it, I can see where those
Moments.
are,
Yeah.
And now in the reverse, I'm at a place of joy, but there are still moments of grief.
Yes.
There are still things that happen.
Yes. Which is totally natural.
Yeah.
And I know we've spoken a lot about the negative comments that we've gotten, but I mean, another reason we're doing this is how many people have come to us and said, I'm healing because of what you guys are doing.
Yes.
Your videos bring me so much joy.
Yes.
I mean, people who have lost their spouses, have lost children, have come to us and said, you guys, I look forward to what you guys bring every night. You bring me so much joy and hope and restoration. And even a really, really close friend of ours came to me the other day and to you at a meeting and said how much she is being restored and the joy that's being brought back into her life after years of grieving.
Yes, right.
Watching our story unfold and the restoration that God's doing in our lives.
Yeah. There's a part of I think any person, like we relate. I went on this little kick a while back. You remember this? We were dating, and I was reading about these mirror neurons. I can't get it out of my head, y'all.
I pick it up all the time, and I'm like, oh wait, that's and I'll be sitting there like pacing or like side to side, and I'll notice the person across from me starts doing it. I'm like, mirror neuron.
Yeah, it happens. If you should look into these. This really happens. I will test it. I will test this theory. You can, maybe we'll have an episode on this.
Maybe they've already picked up on a lot of mirror neurons that have happened in this podcast.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe you guys have already seen it. Like, oh, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But like, if one person does something, the other person, if they're straight across from them, will do the same thing, whether it's hand movements or. So I'll be at church and I'll be like talking to people outside, and I'll take my foot and I'll like kick the curb. You know what I mean? I'll just like as I'm talking, I'll just like kick the curb. And I'm telling you, like 99% of the time, the person I'm talking to will kick the curb
Every
with
time.
me.
I know.
They'll like reach up and start kicking the curb.
Yep.
Anyways, I bring that up to say, like, I see the same thing happening, like person to person, just like the Bible says, like iron sharpens
Gosh,
iron.
that's such a great
Like,
example.
You know, yeah. So the a brother will sharpen the countenance of his
Yes.
brother, right? Like we can affect in a positive way.
Goodness, yeah.
And I think in the same way, like you can affect in a negative
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Like your actions are affecting other people. So I think that for people to see us who've gone through grief and are now to a place of restoration, a place of joy, a place of happiness, a lot of the time we're at a place of happiness, that like it resonates. And that I think that's what brings that healing is to surround yourself, whether it's a video online or the people that you're with, surrounding yourself with those people who are full of joy and who have found restoration and found peace.
Yeah.
And so
And goodness, what a beautiful thing. Look at the following you have and look at our church.
yeah.
We have close to 400 members that most of them have come to us and said, my goodness, the joy that I see. They didn't know me very well. They've only known me for the past 2 years, 3 years, but they followed you and they walked with you through your grief, most of them. And the ones that did have come up and said how much joy they have and seeing your face light up again and seeing the joy in you again.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole point of this.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Exactly.
I think that's probably a great place for us to probably wrap it up today.
Yeah.
And we'll share more with you guys about in the future. I think next episode we're going to talk about how we met and what that journey looked like. I think we're going to have to go deep. We're going to go good, bad, and ugly. And maybe we'll go ugly, bad, good. And that way we can...
And on a good note.
Yeah. Maybe we'll make a sandwich. We'll go good, bad, ugly, good.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
We don't want those mirror neurons to last too long.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but for us to just recognize the position that the Lord's put us in and the platform that we have, it's a pretty wide platform. It's a pretty wide base. And so to reach out into that base and to try to bring hope and healing and help, that's the whole goal of what we're trying to do. So why don't you guys tell us, you made it all the way this far. Goodness, you made it almost 50 minutes into a video. I don't plan on cutting a lot of silent spaces out of this one. So, why don't you guys chime in down below and leave us some comments and talk to us like what your experiences are, what you've been through, or why don't you could also share with us maybe things that we've done that have helped you all. If you want to put that down in the comments, we'd love to hear from you. Whether this is on Facebook or on YouTube, you ought to be able to go down there and leave a comment. We would love to hear your all's experiences and what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
I don't really have an ending.
No.
Okay. See y'all next time.